What's going on, you guys? This is New York Adventure 1994 here, and today is Tuesday, October 29th, 2024, and here is the video that I've been planning to make for some time now, and this is the video I make on an annual basis on October 29th every year. It is my annual story of when we dealt with Hurricane Sandy when it slammed the Northeast. Today marks 12 years since we dealt with Superstorm Sandy, which was a hurricane that changed our lives forever. And it was one of the most scariest times of our entire lives. And this takes place back when I was in 6th grade, and the storm took place on Monday, October 29, 2012. And once again, this is the story I tell every year on October 29th. It's like my annual scary story. Because that was a scary time in our entire life. One of the most scariest times of our entire life. So, without further ado, I'm gonna start with where it all started and work my way through the story. And this might take a while, and I have a lot to get through in the story. You know how the Sandy story works, where I have a lot to say of what happened because a lot has happened in those 2 weeks when the storm took place. So, ever since that Wednesday, we were warned that a hurricane was expected to impact us, like some monster storm. And they were already labeling it as a Frankenstorm and all these other scary names like before Halloween, that we were expected to see a monstrous hurricane come our way into the Northeast. And they were showing this setup of where the storm was going to go, and they had this huge. They were showing that there was a high pressure block, over by Greenland, which is forcing the storm to go west, which is an unusual direction, especially in October going on November. So, yeah, there was no easy way out for this storm. We were actually trapped with that forecast because there was a huge blocking high pressure which wouldn't let the storm escape out to sea. That it had to shift west and impact us, so there was no way that the storm was able to escape out to sea, and it had to impact us because of that high pressure. If it wasn't for that high pressure over Greenland, this storm would have been less of an issue and just leave out to sea, but it wasn't the case. So we started preparations immediately when we heard the news. And on Friday, October 26th, I was actually a part of my first ever middle school dance. It was the fall dance during my 6th grade year. And I danced for hours in the gym because that's where the dance was being held. It was the fall dance from my middle school, and that was my first ever middle school dance in 6th grade. And I have a photo of it on Facebook. Yeah, that was a fun night for me, even though we were trying to take cover from the hurricane and trying to be prepared as quickly as possible. But I guess we all get a break sometimes, even though a major storm is coming, and we need a break from the worrying of preparing for a life-changing storm. And that weekend, that Saturday, when we were doing our final preparations, we were trying to see whether we had to evacuate Long Island or not and escape into the New York City area, even though it was going to be bad over there. We were planning on escaping to my maternal grandparents' house, who were well inland in the New York City area. We were getting a suitcase ready and everything, and the news was warning us that the hurricane was coming, and there was multiple emergency alerts going off that night. We had to see whether we had to leave or not that weekend and get out and Dodge and go somewhere that's not going to be impacted by all the floods, and the wind would be the only issue. Yeah, we made sure we had an evacuation plan if worst case scenario, if the storm was more stronger than forecasted. And also, that Saturday, that's when the overcast just got started. The sky was just gray, and the overcast was just there. It was like the early signs of the storm being on its way. Actually, the overcast started on Friday, and it started working its way in here. That was like the early signs of the storm working its way in here, even though it wasn't the storm yet. And that Saturday, we were also taking down our outdoor Halloween decorations because the winds were going to be so relentless that Monday that we had no choice but to take down our Halloween decorations on the outside to keep them safe. And we put them back in the attic that night. So there was no Halloween decoration that year for the trick-or-treaters, even though we were originally going to have them on the lawn if it wasn't for this stupid hurricane. But it wasn't the case. And then on Sunday, we went to church, and we did our last minute preparation that Sunday. It was October 28th, and this was during the early signs of the storm. As the evening rolled in, so did the early signs of the storm. It was on its way, and the news was just warning us constantly that the hurricane was coming. And the one unusual thing about Sandy is that it wasn't just a hurricane when it made landfall on the Jersey Shore and impacted the whole Northeast. It was actually a hurricane-force post-tropical one to make landfall in New Jersey, because it was like a hurricane that got wrapped up in another nor'easter that was coming. And it made this huge superstorm, which made it pretty deadly. And this storm actually took place during a full moon, which could affect the wave heights and the high tides. So this storm was no joke. We were expecting 80 to 100 mile an hour wind gusts in this area. And there wasn't really much to happen that Sunday. We were all prepared for the storm. We made sure we had everything, and we had an evacuation plan if we had to get out and Dodge, get out of Long Island until the storm leaves. So it was Monday, October 29th, 2012, and I wake up at 8:30 that morning, and I could hear the wind outside, and it was just the beginning of what was coming our way. The wind wasn't as bad in the morning as it was in the nighttime. It was only gusting to 40 miles an hour at the time, which is still bad, but it's not as bad as what we were gonna see later that night. Yeah, that was the early signs of Sandy. This was the outer bands, which were also pretty strong. And my dad actually went to Astoria for his laptop. He went to Astoria for a quick moment, and then he came back, and he got home in 45 minutes. He was in and out because he had to get his computer ready for some work, especially because we were not gonna have any power. Yeah, we were definitely counting on not having any power because of how bad the winds were gonna be and all the floods that were happening on the South Shore. So I was in the living room watching Halloween specials, and I was watching the PB&J Halloween special, and outside I just knew the winds were starting to crank. I could hear the winds roar, like all day. It was pretty cloudy and I could hear nothing but the wind, like rumbling, like outside the house. And it was like only getting louder and louder, and the gusts were cranking higher and higher. Yeah, we were just going through our day, even though the winds were just really bad in the morning and in the afternoon. And we were watching some Halloween specials on TV, like last minute Halloween specials before the power blows out and before things turned ugly. Don't worry, we weren't dilly-dallying or anything. We were scared and everything, but we had to go about our day and prepare for the potential of power outages. We were all prepared. We were able to do whatever, but it wasn't really a nice sight. And we had like dinner at like 5 in the afternoon, which we normally do. And by the time we finished dinner, I went to my bedroom to get more shots of what outside looks like. And by 5:30 in the afternoon, once my dinner was done, the power just goes out. That was it. The winds were so strong enough that our power went out. And we had no confidence of it turning back on. We had no confidence if it was just a flash or not. Yeah, that was it. Once the power went off, that was completely it. We just had no power. We were in a blackout in our area. My neighborhood and the rest of the neighborhood, we were in the dark. And the sun was setting. It was like getting darker by the second after we lost power. And I was actually doing my math homework in the dark. The only light source I had was a flashlight, and that was pretty much it. But the rest of the living room and the kitchen and the whole house, it was just pitch black. And you could hear nothing but the wind howl outside and rumble to like greater gust. It was getting really, really bad. And over on the South Shore, it was much worse. People's houses were getting flooded. A lot of fires actually broke out. The ocean just came in and flooded all these houses. And flooded all these businesses along the South Shore. And the winds and the waves kept on crashing in. It was a scary roller coaster for everyone that night. It was a really scary night that night. I have never seen a storm this terrifying before. So I'm going to make another part to this video. Stay tuned for part 2.